fighting evil with the powers of magic and friendship. Wands or special trinkets with hearts, wings, or stars on them. Small talking animal mascots that gave antagonists their powers. And, almost always, some sort of overused but still fun transformation animation, where our hero goes from ordinary coming-of-age child or teen into their super-powered magical alter ego. Magical girls, and yes, even magical boys, are a hugely popular trope, popularized in manga and anime. It's even made its way into Western media to become the global phenomenon it is today. In fact, the trope was so well worn now, it's more common to spoof or twist the trope than to find traditional magical girls today. So, on top of it being a hyper-pop, colorful, energetic genre, it's also often self-aware and meta, or full of funny or horrifying twists to hold our attention and stand out from one another. Now, as popular and loved as this genre is, especially starting in the late 90s into the early 2000s, when I was growing up, I wasn't really into them as a kid. I mean, I had nothing against them other than my childhood best friend trying to force me to watch the Sailor Moon English dub when I was 9 years old, and anytime I was at her house. So it might have been a case of anything you try to force me to watch can't be very good, so I don't want to watch it now, because I was quite contrary. I was also a bit of a tomboy, so the girly, sparkly look of these kind of shows kind of also pushed me away from them at the time. I didn't think I'd be able to connect with it. I was more into action-packed shows like Ben 10, Danny Phantom, the Powerpuff Girls, and American Dragon. Besides, I was way more into shows about witches, like Sabrina Teenage Witch. Clearly my taste couldn't be more different than those magical girl shows. Except, I couldn't be more wrong. This is one of those times where being wrong, though, is a lot of fun, because I got to learn about this through some major research. And there's nothing I love more than a rabbit hole about animation and storytelling. And guess what? You're coming with me down the rabbit hole that is the origin story of magical girls and their meaning, and why they're still relevant as ever. I might even do a little magical reveal of my own down the line, but no spoilers. That transformation sequence was really fun to storyboard, but I have a new level of respect for anyone who has to fully animate one of those. I mean, I said no spoilers. Let's start from the beginning instead of what I assume will be the last third of the video, shall we? A magical girl, or Mahou Shoujo, has been an iconic staple of Japanese manga and anime for decades. It goes a lot further back than Sailor Moon. Magical girls as a genre has always been considered part of shoujo, otherwise known as what girls like. Stories with girls as the main demographic, as opposed to shonen, meant for boys. What that means is a bit wishy-washy, since there are boys who watch shoujo and girls who watch shonen. But generally speaking, shoujo tends to be more about cute girls doing slice-of-life things, often including a romance, while shonen is more action-packed and features a male lead. Interestingly, most, if not all, early magical anime and manga were made by men in the beginning. But there was later a shift when shoujo manga magazines started to hire new manga writers through their readership, which was, of course, for girls, and therefore led to a big uptick in women being hired, which led to women writing stories for girls. Arguably, they were going to know better what girls wanted to read or see on TV, right? Or at least, what they wanted to see, what they wished they had as kids. One of the big notable shifts was the difference in art style, which became wispy, ornate designs with bigger emotive eyes. And the big eyes, of course, existed in projects prior to this, but this big shift in the late 60s and early 70s made it much more prevalent in shoujo as a whole. They became known for being elegant, experimental pieces of art, with heightened emotions and dramatic stakes that girls, and a lot of other demographics as well, became really excited for. This felt completely new. It wasn't just magical girl stories that had this, but of course, this included them, so it's good to keep in mind. And as your resident art geek and story lover, the context is fun for me, so I wanted to include it. It all started back in the 1960s, with the last thing I ever would have guessed, but seems obvious now, a TV show about an American witch, Bewitched. Bewitched was hugely popular with young Japanese girls at the time, and manga writers were ravenous for new ways to reach a demographic like that. So, it makes a lot of sense that manga stories came up with the magical girl based on the idea of this new modern witch idea for American pop culture. Many trace it back to the manga The Secrets of Akko-chan, which ran from 1962 to 1965, and was later also adapted into an anime in 1969, which was about a young girl who was gifted a magic mirror, just a little compact, the ones that you can put in your pocket. She could say an incantation while looking into her little compact mirror and transform into whatever or whoever she wanted, with a few rules attached, of course. Akko was a normal little girl, not an evil fighting hero like many magical girls in more modern times. She was more like a realistic kid with a new magical toy to let her do just about anything she wants, but often with consequences or lesson attached. The story didn't try to make Akko perfect, or a role model, more like someone the audience might relate to and have a fun romp with. Similarly, there was Sally the Witch, as an homage directly to Bewitched, was a girl living among regular humans, and had to keep her powers hidden, just like Samantha. Of course, Samantha from Bewitched was an adult woman living in suburban married life, while Sally was an 8-year-old girl, so the similarities didn't go that deep. Sally the Witch was much more of a kid slapstick comedy with magic. It also played homage to a lot of American kids' media. Sally the Witch is credited as the first magical girl to ever appear in an anime in 1966. It was also the first anime to ever be aimed specifically at girls. Even though the manga Secrets of Akko-chan predated it, Sally the Witch is often known widely as the first magical girl. It was so early that it was one of the first anime to adopt color into its run, about 18 episodes into the series. Before that, it was still all black and white. Looking back at it now, I'm not even sure we'd count her as a magical girl in the modern day, since she's a witch who always had her powers. But if modern anime like Little Witch Academia counts as magical girl series, then so does this. Especially since she was one of the core building blocks of the genre. A real trailblazer. Plus, she did change her clothes using magic, so I guess she counts. There was also Princess Knight, Sapphire, in 1967, who may not have been specifically considered a magical girl like the others, since she, strictly speaking, has no magic, was the one that introduced the idea of a hero with a double identity, since Sapphire disguised herself as a boy in the series. She had a cute sidekick, a floofy costume, a weapon, a sword, not a wand, but still very cool. So it's not hard to tell why this one is one of the main series that led to the creation of the magical girl trope. With all this, the seeds were planted for the genre, but with one big thing still missing from the popular trope as we know it today: the magical transformation, or at least the level at which we're used to now. Some did do transformations, but they were short and subtle. Arguably, the transformations in magical shows are one of the most exciting parts. Funny thing about those transformation sequences, while they're a fan favorite, it's often used for the writers to pad out the runtime, and to have reusable artwork for the animators, often with very limited animation. But it's usually so exciting and pretty that we as the audience don't mind the same sequence being in most episodes. Plus, I'm all for letting the animators and writers have a creative way to lighten the workload a little. If the script is running a little short, budget is low, throw in a magical transformation, and frankly, a lot of us are happy with that. The manga Cutie Honey first appeared in 1973 as an android girl who transforms into different versions of herself to fight evil. She was one of the first to use a catchphrase to transform, shouting, "Honey Flash!" Interestingly, she wasn't technically a magical girl at all, since she was an android, but ultimately the series treated it the same. She wasn't even the only android magical girl at the time, running at about the same time as Magical Girl Limit-chan, with more or less the same concept. Honey Flash's contribution to the magical girl world, though, is the transformation, which took a while to catch on, but it's credited as the first to ever do so. Every one of her transformation animations were different, which might be why. Finally, for arguably the most famous magical girl series of all time, Sailor Moon came around in 1992, championing love and female friendship. It truly shaped the magical girl concept as we know her today, by combining all of the best elements from its predecessors. It felt like nothing that ever came before it. It was action-packed, featured magical transformations and strong characters with powers, without sacrificing traditionally feminine characteristics and interests. Not that there is anything wrong with a more masculine heroine, but it's cool to see some stories that show a girl can be strong and girly at the same time. It's shockingly hard to find. The show was not afraid to be both tough and girly with topics like makeup, fashion, and romance, and it did it in a way that surprisingly, one of the biggest demographics of the show was boys, who were very into the whole moe movement. Essentially, they just liked that it was cute and fun while still kicking butt. Reminds me a lot of the Powerpuff Girls, who were also a team of superpowered girls who would fight evil while being adorable. It was also loved by both girls and boys. In the 90s, there's often a stigma attached for those boys though, which is a shame. I think that show is for everyone. Now, that was a show I was a big fan of, and I would have been shocked to hear Powerpuff Girls compared to a show like Sailor Moon at the time. Ironically, there is actually an anime based on Powerpuff Girls, and it's a magical girl show. I've seen it. It's very Sailor Moon coded. With the huge popularity of Sailor Moon, the magical girl became a fully fledged genre, bringing about shows like Cardcaptor Sakura, Princess Tutu, Tokyo Mew Mew, and Pretty Cure, and so many more. These all led to the boom of magical girls in the 2000s and beyond, where it became so popular and widespread, not just with young girls, but all gender and age demographics. Now, magical girl shows and stories were also being made with older audiences in mind, and even parody series were made, because frankly, by the 2010s, people felt that the whole magical girl thing was a little overdone. So it was starting to become common for magical girl shows to sort of make fun of its overdone formulas. I love it when genres can poke fun at themselves, and this absolutely hits the mark on that. Among these parodies came with the lesser known but still prevalent magical boy anime. I don't know many of these, but I do have a favorite, Cute High Earth Defense Club Love, which premiered in 2015. This parody tells the story of 5 ordinary high school boys who were given extraordinary nature-based powers from a talking pink space wombat. Yes, it's as weird as it sounds, and I love it. And don't think that since it's about boys, that it's any less colorful or about camaraderie and love. If anything, the show leans more into that, complete with the boys having magical transformations with the power of their magical bracelets. The monsters they fight are typically their cursed classmates, who have some sort of lesson to learn, and they defeat them with combat, followed by some advice and a love shower spell to break the curse. But it's not just the shows that parody the magical girls that feature magical boys. Let's not forget about the magical boys that aren't the star of the show, like Tuxedo Mask from Sailor Moon, or Lee from Cardcaptor Sakura. Also, shows that may not seem like magical boy shows at first glance, because it's not quite so upbeat and colorful, but still feature boys with magical powers who fight evil, like Bungo Stray Dogs, where characters like Atsushi discovers he has the power to turn into White Tiger under the moonlight, and he joins a team of other supernaturally powered detectives. Animal transformations are less common, but absolutely a part of this trope too, apparently including the cat Luna from Sailor Moon having the ability to turn from cat to human. Apparently she's neither. Of course, I happen to know someone else who can go back and forth between animal form and human form. This is my pal Eli. Say hi to our guest, Eli.
Hi?
Eli is the co-host of this channel. He may look like an ordinary talking dragon,
What's going on?
but he's actually a bit of magical boy himself.
You know I was sleeping when you walked in, right? I have no idea what you're going on about.
But he can turn into a human, or his magical in-between known as Fire Drake, the winged superhero with the powers of a dragon to fly and breathe fire.
Oh, that? Yeah, I can do that. Anytime I want. So what?
Well, that makes you a magical boy, don't you think? You only have one thing missing.
A roommate who knocks before entering a room?
A magical transformation! And, don't get too excited.
Don't worry, I'm not.
After all, I'm more of a character designer and a storyboard artist than an animator, so this is a little rough around the edges, but I think it came out pretty cool anyway. It started out as a little storyboard, but then I got to coloring it, and, well, you can't have a magical boy transformation without particle effects and music. So, here's what I came up with.
Okay, that was pretty cool. Also, anyone who's shocked that I can look like this has some homework to do. After this video, go watch the video I made myself as a human in Sims, The Sims 4, and then demand we make more of those videos in the comments. I have no idea why that didn't go viral. I was in complete creative control of that for a change.
That's great, Eli. Love the call to action. But let's go back to today's topic.
Which is?
Similar to how much American pop culture, like Bewitched, inspired the magical girl in Japan, the magical girl then made it full circle and heavily inspired American pop culture. I love it when stories seem to talk back and forth like this. American kids, tweens, and teens with secret magical identities to fight evil have been around for a long time, but they were clearly influenced by the magical girls of the East. A popular but not often talked about example is Witch, a French-American collaboration, book series and TV series from the early 2000s. It was a magical girl team with your classic transformation sequences and elemental magical powers. They'd fight evil and deal with normal teenage problems at home and at school. This was actually one I watched religiously as a kid. Ironic from a kid who thought every magical girl series was too girly for me. In spite of the name Witch, the show had very traditional magical girls, rather than a coven of young witches as its main characters. I remember being confused about that, but watching it anyway. I liked Will and Tarani the most. The show also featured my favorite voice actor, Jason Marsden, as Matt, Will's boyfriend.
You think they'd let us drive this thing?
I think they want us to drive this thing. Let's check it out. Come on.
Is that relevant? No, not really. But it's fun. More recently, there were shows like Star vs. the Forces of Evil in the late 2010s. A magical princess from another world with transformation sequences for special occasions. And magical wand. She had long flowy hair, and most importantly, magical hijinks. It wasn't a perfect show.
No kidding. Have you seen the last season of that show? What a train wreck. The ending is probably the only thing that show is known for anymore.
But it did pretty perfectly represent the girl power and power friendship themes often associated with the genre. But, just like in Japan, this wasn't limited to just the girls as main characters on the shows. One of my favorite shows from the 2010s is a perfect example of this, American Dragon. The boy who's also a dragon, with a magical transformation sequence you'd see just about every episode. He could use his magical abilities to protect the world with the help of his wise grandpa and his slightly annoying animal companion, Foo Dog. Sounds a lot like Eli, doesn't it? Although I'm not sure Eli would get along with Jake.
I think I'd prefer to meet Zuko. Same voice actor.
I can't believe this.
Also, he has fire powers.
Another perfect example I know well is Ben 10, a young boy with a watch that could transform him into one of many different alien forms, so he could defeat evil forces with the help of his family. And yes, of course, this included magical transformation sequences, just like any magical girl show. Gotta keep it, both for the fanfare and also to give the animators a break now and then, right? Most of these examples are 1 or 2 decades old now, but I don't want to give the idea that the magical girl has died off or become obsolete. Very recently, an independent artist made an animatic pilot episode for Portfolio that was hugely popular here on YouTube, called Pretty Please, I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl, created by Kiana Mai. It's both a devoted example of the classic magical girl trope, and also a bit of a parody, with the main character not wanting to be a magical girl at all. She would rather just live the life of a normal schoolgirl. Meanwhile, the other main character is a huge magical girl fan, so it's not like the show itself doesn't like the trope. This interesting twist made the show idea feel fresh, and it still very successfully keeps the humor and hijinks of classic anime of the same genre. Even though it's only an animatic, it's a great example of the continued potential of this genre. I followed Kiana on Twitter all through this process, and it's so cool to see that project of hers take off like this. She certainly didn't expect it. It's so cool. Magical girls have dipped in popularity in recent years, but based on the success of this animatic, it wouldn't surprise me if other similar projects, independent or otherwise, could start cropping up in time. Hopefully with even more fresh, interesting takes on the genre, rather than sticking too close to the original trope, because while I love it, its themes and its history, there's always room for innovation. This way, stories don't get boring and predictable for the audience. Stereotypical stories and tropes should stay fun, but find new ways to challenge us to think. As a genre, magical girls have been around for over 60 years now, with a colorful history of the good, the badly animated, and the weird. But overall, I love this genre for its empowerment for girls, especially starting at the time where girls really had nothing like it for them yet. Themes of strong, powerful, but still up to normal girls with messages of love and friendship were innovative at the time, and frankly timeless. And, based on the demographics of many of these shows, it's not just young girls who need themes like this. We all do. Every gender demographic and every age demographic can use a little reminder about these things, both as comfort shows for those of us who really already know these themes well, and for first-time watchers who maybe haven't gotten this message in some way or another yet. I mean, shows catered to boys sometimes don't go into these themes nearly enough, which is one of the reasons why I made sure to talk about magical boys here. Sure, boy superheroes are easier to find historically, and, well, there's just more of them in general. But there's something different about magical boys than your run-of-the-mill superhero, with the weight of the world on their shoulders. Because magical boys, much like the ones from Cute High Defense Club Love, still got to just be kids, focused on their friendships and caring about other students, while learning and growing as people and just having fun. I think everyone deserves to have stories like that they can relate to. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due. In addition to my own research on this topic, that I will include in the description, I also want to point anyone interested to a series by Erin Cerise called Maho Profile. She made 11 videos delving deep into the history of magical girls through videos on each early magical series. They're a few years old now, at this point, but well worth a watch if you want to see those next. But before you do, why not subscribe to our channel? I mean, you made it this far, so I have a feeling we'd get along. Stick around for our own brand of magical girl and boy shenanigans, where we talk about art and stories, and try to make our own while we're at it. Conjure up some creativity with us. Anyway, that's all I've got for today, but I'll see you real soon.
Bye, guys.